What's going on, beautiful people? Palantir just hit a $111 million contract between three different contracts with the U.S. Air Force, with the Space Force, and U.S. Command. And these are all one-year contracts. So you might think I'm going to talk about that, but I'm not going to be talking about this. I'm going to be talking about an interview that just happened, a very, very subtle but important interview that is flying under the radar. 2 days ago, Joe Lonsdale, who's one of the co-founders of Palantir, had an interview with Bloomberg UK. There seems to be a theme formulating around the United Kingdom. Palantir, Dr. Alex Karp does an interview with the UK, and now Joe Lonsdale is doing an interview in UK. And they're talking about several different things. They're talking about healthcare. Obviously, we're trying to get this massive NHS contract. We're talking about making the UK a central hub for artificial intelligence in Europe, which some people are laughing at, but some people are understanding. And of course, building up UK's military. Boris Johnson was the predecessor to Rishi Sunak, and then there was the woman in between, and this all happened within 1 year. Boris Johnson has a fantastic rapport, fantastic relationship with Palantir. Through Boris Johnson, Palantir actually had over $100 million of contracts with the NHS. He left, and Palantir now has $100 million worth of military contracts with the UK. That military contract is to literally modernize their military. So now Rishi Sunak comes in and he has a point to prove. He wants to make UK great again, straight up. You know, after World War II, the UK is just not what it used to be. I'm not shitting on them. I'm not, telling you guys something that you don't know. They are a superpower, but they are not like the kings, the best, right? So Rishi Sunak is trying to move them into the next direction. Joe Lonsdale had a really, really good interview. Joe Lonsdale does not run Palantir on a daily basis, but what he says means something because obviously he has some knowledge or some say about what happens, even though he doesn't have the final say. And in this interview, he talks about, healthcare. He talks about making the UK a central hub for artificial intelligence. He also talks about the military, this Ukrainian and Russian war, and how he hopes that NATO countries are going to keep contributing their fair share into NATO, because a lot of that money is going to go to hardware like Lockheed and Martin companies, but a lot of it is going to go into software companies, and there's very few software companies, Palantir being essentially a software prime. So the lion's share of money for specifically software is going to be going to Palantir. Palantir is opening up a central hub for Europe in England, in London, and they're going to build their headquarters there. Rishi Sunak is literally on, tons of publications right now showing, AI, UK is all about AI. We're going to be super, super strong. Joe Lonsdale speaks about the healthcare. He speaks about the AI. He speaks about the military. Palantir's largest, area is the United States. Their second largest area is the UK. Their third largest area is probably going to be Ukraine in a year to 2 years from now. The UK is growing and they want their power to grow. If Russia loses this war to Ukraine, expect NATO countries and the heads of NATO countries to become so much stronger. Obviously America, obviously countries like Germany, and I think UK wants their fair share. I think UK wants to really do a power grab over here to make themselves stronger. For UK to become stronger, Palantir can help them with their software. So what's going to be good for UK is going to be good for Palantir because Palantir is going to be entrenched with UK. $100 million with NHS already. Without this federated data system, $500 million contract that we're going after. $100 million already with the UK military to modernize them. That is not even taking into account how much more contracts we're going to get with the UK military after this one is up or in parallel. As I said earlier today, 3 contracts with the United States Armed Forces in Space Force, Air Force, Special Command. Something similar is going to be happening in the UK in the future. It's not just going to be UK military. It's going to be different branches within the UK military. I highly suggest that you listen to the rest of this interview. This is going to be a fantastic interview. It's only like 6 minutes long, so you're not really wasting too much time. But it's very important to watch these interviews and get the subtle hints. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about this interview. And if you guys are getting the same vibe that I'm getting, Palantir, Dr. Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, probably Cheyenne Sanker is doing some interviews that I'm going to find later on, so on and so forth. Before we go any further, please down below, I have channel membership. If you want to buy me a cup of water, a bottle of water, or a coffee, it's $3 a month. I have a link down below. And if you don't want to be a channel member, which is all cool, please at least follow me on Twitter. I'm going to leave a link to my Twitter down below. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of this video.
Let's start with what is exciting you. What is the focus? What is your terms of appetite for opportunity? What are you looking to invest in, put your money to play in at this point?
Thanks for having me, Tom. Well, it's great to be over here in London with a lot of talent here. You know, obviously everyone's focusing on AI. We got an industrial revolution that could really improve society. There's lots of implications for healthcare, lots of implications for many other areas. You know, we're looking for the top technology cultures in the world working on things that are newly possible. And you're seeing stuff in defense, you're seeing stuff in bio, you're seeing stuff in a lot of areas these days.
Talk to us about artificial intelligence and regulation. You have people like Geoffrey Hinton, of course, known as the godfather of AI, left Google so he could speak more openly about the risks. He's worried about military combined with AI robots. That's the kind of thing that maybe Palantir would be involved in. Is he overstating the risks of this technology?
You know, I really admire people like Geoffrey Hinton and what he achieved at Google and otherwise. I probably fall more on the side of Mark Andreessen in this debate. I think it's just extraordinary, the kind of positive upside we have for society. I think we should probably think of this as another industrial revolution. In the US, when we had an industrial revolution from 1870 to 1900, GNP went up 233%. So basically what that means is the average person was more than 3 times wealthier, you know, one generation later. And I think that could be even bigger than that this time. If you think of, having personalized AI coaches and teachers and therapists for everyone, I think there's so much kind of prosperity and well-being we create in the world with this technology.
The risks that people point to, misinformation, job displacement, even potentially AI-created humanity, global extinction. These are the risks that people are talking about. Those risks, are they real? How far off are they? And what should the guardrails be? What should the role of government be?
Well, I think it's very difficult for any top-down force to decide what is real information, what is misinformation. This is a very, very hard problem. It's why the U.S. has the First Amendment. It's why the English historically have had free English era, where you don't actually have the government telling you what to say. So I think while you'll definitely get all sorts of misinformation, I think the positive upsides just massively outweigh that.
Should the government have a role, though, in regulating AI?
There's probably something around like purposeful libel that you shouldn't be allowed to do.
It's very limited.
I think it needs to be very limited because I think the way these technologies work is you don't know exactly how to apply them and what they're going to look like. And just the upside of fixing healthcare, the upside of fixing and making these industries more productive is so high for all of us. Now, I do think there's a separate question about existential threats, right?
Yes.
So Sam Altman's a friend. He's been talking about some of these issues. I guess I would disagree with him on having government very involved in the first part. That mostly benefits big corporations. You can hire armies of lawyers and set the rules for their way. I agree that, imagine it's the year 2032, a GPT-12 is out, the AI's helped design it, and, there's North Korea as well as maybe some really crazy autocrats and other billionaires are trying to build their own giant supercluster GPUs, which have, more intelligence than the entire human race. Maybe we should be careful about, who gets to have a $10 billion supercluster with super advanced AI. There definitely probably should be some thinking about that. Now, I think the whole point, though, is we have to watch this closely and we have to learn how it works. We have to be very careful not to kill it in its infancy.
Elon Musk is a friend of yours. He says you should press the pause button for 6 months.
I have a lot of respect for Elon, and I think there's some frustration with how OpenAI iterated after he funded it, and it became beholden to to Microsoft and other structures maybe he wouldn't have put in place there. If we pause, what happens is China keeps going, and they get way ahead, and then they get to shape the future of it, and they get to shape the future of the world more in the direction they want, and that to me is much worse.
Europe wants to be setting the agenda in terms of regulating AI. What's their playbook looking like? Are they taking the right approach?
I mean, I don't want to be too rude here, but I don't think Europe is really on the forefront right now. I think America and China are, and I think that the most likely outcome for Europe trying to regulate it is they basically prevent the Industrial Revolution from happening in Europe, and it remains a place where it's very nice to take my daughters on vacation, but maybe is not part of the future of the world innovation-wise if they're not very careful. This is the one possible upside of Brexit you could talk about, is that maybe Europe commits suicide with its regulation and stops any development there, and maybe the UK gets it right and doesn't do so.
Maybe Europe commits suicide with this regulation. That's a strong line, Joe. When it comes, there's something else that's happening in Europe. A lot of spending on defence. Are you Palantir, 8VC, are you getting involved? Are you involved in Ukraine? Are you involved in NATO in terms of defense contracts? What's that looking like?
Yeah, and the Europe situation is not just coming from me, by the way. I have a lot of friends who are leaders in European industry who are trying to write to the regulators and prevent them from doing this. This is a big deal Europe's working on right now. Now, on the defense side, it's very heartening to see people finally agree with some of the defense stuff. Obviously, as a founder of Palantir, I've been involved in this for a long time. We started a few new defense companies. We started Epirus 5 or 6 years ago, a global leader in electronic warfare. A lot of people thought it was very strange to be doing defense 5 or 6 years ago. Now they all want to invest and help, which is wonderful. I hope that there's kind of a long-term responsibility where the Europeans, get their spend up to levels they agreed with NATO and kind of pull their own weight, which you haven't seen them doing for 20 years. So it's very promising they're starting to do it now. Is it a temporary flash in the pan where they're temporarily afraid because of Ukraine, or do they maintain that responsibility? That's still a very open question for defense companies you might want to build here.
2024, we're looking ahead to the elections, US elections. You're supporting Ron DeSantis. Are you backing him financially, Joe?
Yes, I'm a supporter of Ron DeSantis. I apologize to the world for the reality show going on in America. It's quite embarrassing with all of this. I thought a lot of what the Trump administration did was very positive. I'm very good friends with people who were in that administration. I think the man himself has become even more of an embarrassment in the last couple of years. And I think Ron
is Trump a busted flush?
I don't know if he's a busted flush, but he does seem to be not as strong as he was even a few years ago, and it's very concerning, a lot of the things he did. I think the only real alternative on the right to him right now is DeSantis.
And to be clear, you're putting your money, are you fundraising, are you putting some money towards his campaign, Ron DeSantis' campaign?
So as you know, I have the policy group, Cicero, that's very active in 12 states. We work with a lot of governors. DeSantis has been one of the most competent people we've ever worked with. He's very into the details. He'll get all the policies. He'll read it himself. He'll learn and have very advanced questions, extremely bright guy. When there's a crisis, he'll show up and fix things. I mean, that kind of competence, we need someone in our generation who's competent in charge.
So you are putting your money behind him?
Yes.
Very quick last one, Elon Musk is a friend. Should he run for office at some point?
Well, I don't believe he's allowed to become president because he was not born in the U.S. based on how our Constitution works. Elon is extremely competent. I think that whoever's president should be bringing him to the White House and getting his advice on a number of issues. And I think it's a huge mistake that President Biden is not doing that. I hope whoever wins on the left or right should be getting advice from people like him.